I was rushed to the hospital, unconscious. My son's shocking response changed everything. I will never forget the moment everything shattered. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled my nostrils as I hovered between life and death, the bright lights above flickering like a warning. I could hear the frantic sounds of machines beeping, every sound swelling with urgency. My heart raced, each beat echoing in the abyss of my mind, as if it knew the chaos around me before I did. When I finally opened my eyes, the darkness receded, but I was greeted by a vision that shook me to my core. My son, Lucas, stood by my bedside. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but his expression, it was something else. A mixture of fear and something darker flickered in his eyes. "Why didn't you listen?" he whispered in a voice that cut through me like a knife. Was that anger I saw? In that moment, something felt terribly off. I could see his trembling hands clutching the edge of my hospital bed. They were still the hands of a kid, but they felt heavier, as if burdened with secrets. Memories flashed Lucas, my little boy with his stubborn smile, always full of dreams. I thought of the late-night talks, the endless stories, and all the joy that filled our days. But that joy had turned into shadows. What had happened? "Mom, you need to wake up," he pleaded, his voice cracking. Everything's changed." The silence after his words stretched, thick and suffocating. I couldn't breathe. What did he mean by that? Questions spiraled in my mind, twisting like a vortex. I reached for him, my hand trembling, desperate to comfort him, but the gap felt insurmountable. "What's wrong?" I croaked, my voice a fragile whisper. He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. Then, the weight of his shoulders collapsed, and a shudder escaped him. "Things aren't the same at home. Dad, he's not." Lucas trailed off, biting his lip. Each pause knocked the wind out of me. My heart raced again, sinking into the abyss of uncertainty. What had happened while I lay unconscious? Was my family falling apart? The thought shattered my heart into a million jagged pieces. My world was quaking, and I was in the eye of the storm, holding on to hope in the darkness. "Lucas, please," I begged, clinging to the remnants of clarity I had. "Tell me." He looked up, his eyes brimming with unshed tears, and opened his mouth to speak. But just then, a thunderous crash echoed from the corridor, followed by frantic footsteps. My heart jumped into my throat. I felt the familiar grip of anxiety tighten around me. Was it too late to save my family? What lay beyond those hospital walls that could change everything? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The shadows deepened around us, and I could feel the tension in the air thickening, wrapping around us like a shroud. Lucas's expression hardened momentarily as the noise from the hallway settled down, replaced by a creeping silence that felt far more ominous. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperate to push back the encroaching darkness, searching for clarity. "Please, just tell me," I urged again, my voice barely above a whisper, but it clung to Lucas's heart like a lifeline. He took a deep breath, shoulders rising as he steadied himself, and began again. "Dad, he's not himself. He's different. Since you..." He trailed off again, his gaze drifting back to the ground. Unable to bear the weight of the words, my throat tightened. "Since I what?" I pressed, though the answer was starting to form like an unwelcome ghost in my mind. His fingers dug into the fabric of his jeans, and I realized he was struggling, agonizing over the truth. "Since you collapsed, he got angry. And he's been distant. I don't know how to talk to him anymore. I feel like I'm losing you both." His voice cracked, and my heart shattered anew. The boy before me was not just my son. He was also the tender heart of our family, now caught in the crossfire of a battle he didn't choose. As he spoke, fragments of memories flashed before me, happier times of laughter echoing through our home. But that joy had faded against the backdrop of hurt and silence. My fingers trembled, and I wanted so desperately to take his hand, to comfort him, to reassure him that we would find our way back to that warmth. "Lucas, we can fix this," I encouraged, my pulse racing with the weight of our situation. Your father, he just needs time. He'll come around. We can talk to him. But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at the edges of my certainty. What if it was too late? What if the rift had grown too wide? His eyes met mine again, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of that little boy who used to climb into my lap and tell me the wildest stories. But what if Dad doesn't want to come back? His voice trembled, and I felt the earth shift beneath me. What could I say to quell the storm of fear that gripped his heart? Suddenly, the door burst open and a nurse rushed in, breaking the moment like a fragile glass. Mrs. Martinez? Her voice was clipped but calm, an anchor amidst the chaos. We need to run some tests. You might feel a bit of discomfort. She glanced at Lucas, offering him a reassuring smile that ignited a flicker of hope, a small act of kindness amidst the turmoil. Stay here, I told Lucas vehemently, though uncertainty clawed at me. He'll be right back. I didn't wait for him to respond before the nurse ushered me through the doorway. Leaving behind the cocoon of our fragile conversation, as the fluorescent lights washed over me, a new wave of anxiety surged. The sounds of hospital machinery blended into a cacophony of dread. What if something was seriously wrong with me that would change everything for my family? What if I never returned to him, to us? I could feel the walls closing in, constricting my breath. The nurse interrupted my spiraling thoughts, leading me to a cold examination room. Just a few tests, she repeated, her tone assuring. But the sterile smell of disinfectant made the world spin. I thought of Lucas, his vulnerable heart shattered by my absence, his father slipping further away each day. As they took my blood and ran tests, I felt untethered, like a leaf caught on the wind, drifting further away from the shore of my family. Burdens heavied my heart, and I fought back tears as I thought of the chaos around me. When they finally finished, I found myself alone in the room, grasping desperately for hope. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I fished it out, heart pounding with anticipation. A message from my sister: I'm here if you need me. Just call. It felt like a small ember igniting in the dark, a promise that I wasn't entirely alone. But even that ember couldn't hold back the tide of despair that threatened to drown me. I needed to get back to Lucas, to fix whatever was unraveling in our family. But what if I was too late? Finally, the door creaked open again, and I turned to see the nurse returning. You can go back now, she said. But there was something unspoken in her eyes, a shadow of uncertainty. Is everything okay? I asked, dread filling my throat. Her smile faltered for a brief moment before she nodded. But something in her demeanor fell off, as if the weight of her answer would change everything I thought I knew. That I stepped back into the hallway, heart racing, only to find Lucas pacing in front of my room. His posture was tense, worry etched across his young face. But as I moved steadily toward him, a low rumble echoed through the building, shaking the floor beneath us. What was that? Lucas asked, fear coloring his voice. Before I could respond, another crash reverberated from down the hall, followed by the blaring of an alarm. My heart dropped. This wasn't just an ordinary sound, it was a warning. Lucas, we need to. But before I could finish, the power flickered, and the lights overhead dimmed to an eerie glow. In that moment, uncertainty roared back, leaving me shaken. Whatever was happening beyond those walls could shatter our fragile hope completely. And as the alarm continued, I could only think of one thing. Was this the beginning of the end, or was there still a way forward despite the chaos that awaited us? I navigated the dimly lit hallway, each step a fight against the rising tide of fear. Lucas' fingers pressed into my wrist, a frail connection tethering us together, grounding me as the alarms wailed relentlessly, demanding attention while I tried to block them out. What's happening? The panic in Lucas' voice was a visceral hook, pulling me away from my own worries. I focused on his stricken expression, shadowed with anxiety, yet still shimmering with the remnants of a childlike hope that radiated from him. Stay close, I urged, clutching his small hand in mine. The sensation was strangely comforting amidst the chaos, but it also reminded me of how vulnerable we were, how fragile it felt, as if we were navigating an avalanche. The nurse who had guided me to the tests came rushing back down the corridor, her face taut with urgency. We need to evacuate the building, she shouted, and her words sent a jolt through me. Evacuate. I echoed numbly, my mind racing. The hospital wasn't just a place of healing, it was a fortress of uncertainty now. Patience first, she continued, absently tugging her hair back, as though to keep chaos at bay. There's a fire in the utility room. We need to without waiting for her to finish. I pulled Lucas closer and edged toward the nearest exit. But the scene was, however, not the swift escape I had envisioned. The hallway quickly filled with people, nurses organizing patients, while EMTs ushered families into the quiet of an emergency exit. The oppressive atmosphere stifled me, each breath feeling like I was swallowing sorrow. As we stumbled through the crowd, a small figure whipped past us, an older woman in scrubs, a bedraggled oxygen tank trailing behind her. She glanced back with a weary smile, offering a nod that somehow sparked a flicker of warmth in the chaos. It was a reminder that even in moments of despair, human connection could ignite hope. You're doing great. Stay strong. The sincerity in her voice stood out against the backdrop of confusion that I squeezed Lucas' hand, the comfort of her words lingering in the air between us. We can do this together, I murmured, steeling myself as we finally reached the emergency exit, the air turning fresh yet tinged with a hint of smoke. Outside, the cool night air wrapped around us like a balm, but the reality of what lay before us hit instantly. The parking lot was full of sirens, glowing lights, and stretching shadows. It was a world turned topsy-turvy, frantic energy rippling across the gathering crowd. "Where's Dad?" Lucas' voice, small and broken, shattered my attempts at maintaining a brave front. In that instant, I felt the ground shift again, the fear clawing its way back into my chest as his childhood innocence clashed against the stark enormity of our circumstances. "That I don't know, honey," I admitted, and for the first time that night, the truth resonated through me with a chilling force. I had been so focused on keeping him calm, on finding my own way through, that I hadn't considered the hardest part: facing this unraveling storm together, without the strength of Michael by our side. A sudden commotion rippled through the crowd, people shifting and murmuring anxiously. A paramedic rushed past us, and a familiar shape darted to the side. My heart sank as I came to a staggering realization. "Lucas, stay here," I cried out, but in an instant, he was already racing after the figure slipping through the throng. "Dad," he called, desperation spilling from his lips, and it shattered the very foundation of my resolve. As I pushed forward, fighting through the sea of bodies, I could only pray that Michael was indeed there, capable of coming back to us again. When I finally broke through the crowd, what I saw wasn't what I hoped for. Michael stood near the entryway, his expression a perfect mosaic of pain and fury, cradling something. My heart dropped as I recognized the slumped form of a fellow patient, unconscious in his arms. "Get away," he shouted, but it was his eyes that held me, paralyzed amber pools of anguish screaming for help. I could see the chaos swirling around him, the gloss of desperation on his face, and it dawned on me he was teetering on the edge of something even darker than the fire that threatened to consume the building. "Lucas," I screamed, searching for my son, but he was already overwhelmed by the sea of chaos, drawn closer to his father's turmoil without a thought. In those heart-stopping moments, I felt the irreversible rupture of a family spiraling into ruin. The darkness loomed, threatening to swallow us whole, and I stood powerless on the precipice of it all. As Michael's gaze met mine, raw and defensive, a flicker of something deeper passed between us, a silent acknowledgement of loss, guilt, and everything we could have been. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the sound of sirens crescendoed, drowning my voice in urgency. Over the din, I barely heard Lucas gasp, "What's wrong with Dad?" And there it was, the question that clawed at the walls of our fragile existence, shaking them to their foundation. Just as I reached to reassure him, the world splintered, and fear began to settle in like a cold fog. Whatever was about to unfold, nothing would ever be the same again. The distant wails of sirens ebbed and flowed like a tide, pulling me deeper into a current of dread. Mitchell's grip on the patient tightened as if he were trying to keep together the pieces of his own shattered spirit, while the flicker of his hopeful gaze towards me dimmed under the weight of urgency. "Lucas, stay close," I called again, but my voice felt small, lost among the gathering storm of chaos. I stepped forward, pushing against the crowd, each movement a battle against the anxiety that twisted my insides. "Dad, help him, please." Lucas' pleas pierced my heart, the innocence in his voice contrasting starkly with the urgency surrounding us. He tugged on my shirt, his eyes wide and pleading, grasping for comfort I struggled to provide. "Everything will be okay," I began, but the words caught in my throat as I locked eyes with Michael again. His expression was a tempest of emotions, a mirror reflecting both determination and dread. He took a step toward us but paused, the gravity of his burden weighing on him like a stone. "I can't just leave him," he muttered, his voice cracking. "Maybe someone else," I started, desperate to draw him away from the precipice on which he stood, but he shook his head, the defiance in his eyes mixing with desperation. "He needs help." The sight of Michael, usually my source of strength, now crumbling under the weight of his choices left me reeling. Our frail family unit, once bolstered by common purpose, was now fracturing, the fissures widening with every passing second. However, in that turmoil, a figure emerged from the chaos. A young nurse, her hair secured in a tight bun, pushed against the crowd with purpose, her apron stained but her demeanor resolute. "Sir, we need to strip down the debris. We don't have the resources for, can't you see?" Michael interrupted, desperation lacing his tone. "He's losing consciousness. You have to help him first. Mr. Nowak, please listen to me," she insisted, reaching out to him as people swelled around, forcing us to the sidelines. "We'll get someone to him, but I need you to focus on your own safety first." Dread washed over me as it dawned on Meher. Plea wasn't just for him, but for all of us. I could sense the fragile fabric of our identities unraveling, and amidst the blaring alarms and swirling smoke, I initially thought of abandoning this terrible moment altogether. But I couldn't just turn and run. "Lucas!" I shouted, searching frantically. He had drifted a few steps closer to Michael, where his father was now a fortress, one that seemed impenetrable. "Mama, what if he—" Lucas' voice trembled, a fragile thread of innocence woven tight with fear. I inched forward, my voice faltering. "Sweetheart, we must trust him. He's doing what he thinks is right." And in that moment, I realized, was this the essence of love? The push and pull of choice, even if that choice led to perilous intersections? Yet, just as I thought we were all standing together, Michael's voice rang brittle in the air. "I can't lose him too," he said, his gaze breaking mine, heavy with unspoken words, memories of moments we once cherished so deeply. A wave of understanding washed over me, and I shuddered with the realization that in this standing family, we were all alone, battling our own fears and regrets. The nurse beckoned Michael forward, but he hesitated, still cradling the unconscious patient. "You can't make me leave him. I won't allow you to be consumed by this," she replied firmly, determination etched across her youthful face. It pierced through the shadows, clouding our hearts like the morning sun breaking through a storm. "We're losing time." In that haunting heartbeat, a surreal moment flickered to life. The disarray around us fell away, and for an instant, there was clarity. Michael was not a man lost. He was a father who felt he was at a crossroads, torn between saving a life and potentially sacrificing his own family. "Please," I urged, stepping closer to him, weaving through sputtering chaos. "Let this nurse help him. We have to stay together." Just then, like a bolt from the blue, a new sound broke through the air. The low rumble of sirens grew more insistent, and another shroud of smoke unfurled nearby, the ominous threat curling ever closer. "Take him," Michael finally shouted, launching the patient into the arms of waiting EMTs, the hope fading like the sun behind gathering clouds. "Come with us," the nurse commanded, reaching for Michael, her eyes pleading. But in that very instant, just as the warmth of desperation clung to us, the ground shuddered. A concussive boom erupted from the building's depths, a wall collapsing, dust and debris erupting into the air like a cloud of despair. I barely had time to react, my instincts screaming for survival. Lucas' small frame slipped from my grasp as my own world spiraled into darkness and chaos, his terrified cries swallowed by the ensuing fury. "Mama!" As I fell backward, the ground trembling beneath me, I realized that everything I believed was about to implode. Your fragile bond, Michael's strength, and Lucas' innocent hope all threatened to be buried under the weight of our trials. The edges of my vision darkened, and I reached futilely for Lucas, praying against a fate that suddenly felt inescapable. "Lucas!" I screamed, my voice trailing into the suffocating darkness. The the shadows closing in on this corner of our lives. A silent vow echoed within me amidst the chaos. I would claw my way back into the light, no matter the cost. But the darkness loomed ever closer, and I could not shake the question that lingered, heavy in the air. Would I find my son in this shrouded night? The world lurched and shifted as I was pulled from the grasp of consciousness into jagged shards of awareness. I felt the uncomfortable itch of a breathing mask against my face, the stark smell of antiseptic invading my senses. Moments later, a gurney rattled beneath me, the wheels clattering in bitter protest against the smooth hospital floor. "Stay with us, ma'am," an urgent voice commanded, their breaths mingling with the bustling sounds of emergency around me. Panic surged within me, a wild beast clawing at my insides as the reality of the past moments flickered like dimming sparks. I tried to speak, to cry out, but my throat felt like sandpaper, my body unresponsive. Where was Lucas? The image of him slipping away lost in the chaos crushed my chest, each labored heartbeat only deepening my despair. Flashes of light reflected off hastily assembled medical equipment, illuminating the faces of the nurses hovering above me, their expressions concentrated, resolute. "She's responding," one of them exclaimed, a glimmer of hope piercing through the oppressive fog that enveloped me. I had to fight. I had to breathe deeply and claw my way to the surface where I could scream for my son. But the effort to call out left me gasping, and just as my eyes fluttered shut again, images of him whirlwind through my mind as laughter, the way his hair danced in the breeze, the brightly colored drawings had often gifted me with. Each memory felt like a still frame of joy, moments now turned bittersweet, shadowed by my fears. "Lucas," I managed to croak, but the sound barely broke the air, lost amidst the din of urgent voices. "You're going to be all right," a nurse soothed, pressing down on my shoulder as if anchoring me with her strength. "We need to get you stabilized." Stabilized. The word reverberated through the very fabric of my being, reminding me that though I felt frayed, my spirit flickered with tenacity. With each breath, I summoned all the strength I could muster, an ember igniting a flame. I would not let darkness claim me or my family. Minutes passed like hours, time twisted and distorted within the sterile walls of the hospital. The brisk voices of medical staff blurred around me, leaving only fragments of their discussions reaching my ears. And every now and then, I caught snippets, a child in shock, a father distraught in the waiting area, and someone was looking for me. And then, as if summoned by some invisible force, I heard a familiar voice. "Mama, please." Though faint, it was a tether, anchoring me to the present. My heart raced at the thought of Lucas, and I struggled against the mundanity of the hospital room. "Bring him to me," I gasped, my voice a mere whisper, but our connection as strong as ever. In a blink, a figure emerged through the doorway. Michael, disheveled and pale, his breath uneven, eyes wide and rimmed with worry. Behind him, a nurse coaxed forward a small, trembling shoppy child barely holding back tears. As Lucas stepped into the room, my heart swelled at the sight of him, and yet a chasm of fear opened within me. Would he be forever changed by this? "Mama," he cried, rushing to my side, the softness of his warmth melting the ice that gripped my heart. "I thought I lost you." Too was so afraid. I struggled to lift a hand to his cheek, my palm brushing against his skin, desperate to comfort him. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm here. I'm okay. I'm right here," I murmured, though uncertainty laced every word. His eyes glistened, a mirror reflecting the fragility of our situation. "But I didn't know if you were still on fine." "I'm really fine." My own voice trembled against the weight of reality. We were both still here, but the terror of that day loomed, momentarily overwhelming. Yet even in the suffocating grip of fear, I sensed the flicker of hope, the possibility that we might navigate this darkened path together. As Michael stepped closer, his presence felt like a solid anchor amidst rising tides. There was something in the way he approached that told me he, too, was battling his own demons, each step forward a testament to resolve in the face of uncertainty. But as I looked up at him, my heart raced. "You let him go?" His face twisted in anguish, realizing that in his attempts to save the stranger, he had put our family at risk and possibly at the brink of losing all we cherished. It felt like the only way, but then the explosion, his voice cracked, the words collapsing beneath the weight of sorrow. Lucas clung tightly to my side, blinking at the two of us with a mix of confusion and fear. What happens now? Now we focus on recovering. We will rebuild, I said resolutely, though the tremors of doubt crept through my heart. Could we really piece together what was shattered? Yet, before Michael could respond, a nurse burst into the room, eyes wide and breathless. "We need to ask you to step out for a moment," she said, glancing nervously toward me, and then hastily to Lucas. "There's been a development in the emergency unit." My stomach churned with apprehension, and I exchanged glances with Michael. "What do you mean?" "The patient that was with you earlier, he's awake and asking for you," she blurted, and the weight of those words crashed into me like a tidal wavy and unexpected twist that added more layers to our already chaotic existence. My pulse quickened. A map of emotions lay sprawling before Meerleaf, intertwined with dread. Lucas was at my side, fear etched across his small features as we shared a moment of uncertainty, a bond forged through the looming unknown. "Me? He's asking for me?" I repeated, feeling the weight of culpability once more wrap around me. "Yes, ma'am. Your presence might be crucial for him," she replied delicately. And just like that, my heart wrenched between the need to mend the break in our own family and the pull of a life lost beneath the rubble. A fragile thread stretched taut between redemption and despair, and each beat seemed to echo louder than before. As the nurse gestured for us to follow, I could see Michael's anguish mirroring my own, a shared understanding that we were once more at a crossroads. The specter of our past hovered close, and the future, shrouded in uncertainty, awaited us. "Let's go," I whispered, steeling my resolve as I clasped Lucas's hand fiercely, wishing to shield him from the impending turbulence even as I prepared to confront the storms within my own heart. Memories would be unearthed, and choices laid bare. But as we stepped into the unknown, I felt a flicker of unyielding hope. Though the path ahead was unclear, we would face it together, even as the shadows thickened and cast long doubts. But with every footstep, something deep inside me whispered that the real storm was just beginning to brew, one that could shatter everything I had just begun to mend. The fluorescent lights burned harshly overhead, a stark contrast to the muted emotions brewing within me. Each step echoed against the sterile floor as we approached the room where the man I had barely known lingered between life and death. Lucas walked beside me, his small hand gripped tightly in mine, a fragile lifeline amidst the cascading uncertainty of our situation. "Mommy, who is he?" Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His innocent question cut through the noise of my racing thoughts, grounding me in the moment, forcing me to confront the very essence of why we were here. He was asking me to articulate a truth that felt muddled and fraught with complexity. He was someone who needed help when everything went wrong. I managed, uncertain if my words were soothing or if they only added to his fears. Before I could dwell too long on my response, we reached the door. I hesitated briefly, fighting against the insecurity that floated to the surface like a dark tide, weighing heavier with every second. I had to put on a brave face. For Lucas, though I wasn't entirely sure I possessed the strength, the nurse stepped aside, allowing us to enter. As we stepped inside, the scene unfolded before us like a tragedy captured in slow motion. The man lay in a hospital bed, the weight of emotional upheaval palpable in his sunken cheeks and closed eyes, shadows darkening his once vibrant presence. Tubes ran from his body like lifelines, both sustaining him and reminding me of the fragility of life. If sensing our arrival, his eyes fluttered open, revealing a flicker of recognition that ignited an anxious fire within me. "You came," he rasped, his voice hoarse yet imbued with a veiled urgency. I stepped forward, leading Lucas, who was cautiously craning his neck to look at the stranger. "I'm here," I answered, my heart racing under the intensity of his gaze. Would he remember what had happened? Would he spill the secrets I had desperately buried beneath layers of grief and fear? You were there," he stammered, blinking against the brightness. Pain flickered across his expression, and I sensed he teetered on the edge of revealing more than I was ready to confront. "Mama, who is he?" Lucas echoed, his small voice stepping into the space of uncertainty, innocent but insistent. "He's a friend, sweetheart. He helped me." I breathed out the words, though the lie hung in the air, brittle and unsteady. His gaze shifted back to Lucas, a spark igniting in his eyes. You have a boy? The question was slow, deliberate, as if he struggled against a thick fog of confusion. I saw him. I thought he was Lucas. I interrupted, the panic rising within me. And in that moment, I barely recognized my own voice, laced with fear. No, it's okay. The man insisted softly, his eyes searching mine, an earnest plea for understanding reflected back. I just want to know, are you both all right? That's what matters, I replied, my heart pounding as I fought against the creeping dread that clawed at my insides. We're both okay. But there was an ominous shadow lurking beneath my words. In moments of vulnerability, I could see clearer than ever. A fissure had formed in the fragile structure of our lives. Somewhere, a connection to this man bled through the chaos, threatening to unravel the thin threads of safety I had clung to since that harrowing day. Thank you for saving her, Lucas chimed innocently, his small voice a tender balm amidst the turbulence. I was scared. The man's expression shifted, melting into something warmer, more human. It was your mother who saved me, too. I just tried to protect her. The weight of his admission hung heavy in the air. I felt a knot tighten in my throat as memories of that fateful moment began to resurface, the chaos and destruction spiraling towards me like a haunting specter. I wanted to lash out, to accuse him of recklessness, fear turning to anger. This man had been a compass on a path of destruction, leading me to a point where everything could have ended so differently. Yet here we were, alive. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the hallway, a wrenching sound that shattered the fragile peace we had forged. It was followed by hurried footsteps, frantic voices rising in the distance. Concern etched itself onto the man's face, and I knew that whatever was about to unfold could change everything we had just begun to piece together. Can you take care of him? I asked Lucas, my voice trembling as I leaned down, framing his small face with my trembling hands. Stay here, hold his hand. I need to make sure everything is all right. His bright, innocent eyes filled with confusion, but he nodded, a brave resolve settling into his expression. Okay, Mama. I promise. I didn't spare another glance at them as I stepped out into the corridor, my heart racing. I could feel panic drumming against my chest, urgency clawing at my insides as I searched for the source of the commotion that I in my heart. I clutched the missed opportunities and unsaid words like fragile glass, precious yet perilous. What awaited me around the corner could shatter everything. As I turned with urgency, my breath froze in my throat. The sight that met my eyes was too surreal. A cacophony of voices surrounded me, the hospital staff moving with frantic motions, a stretcher being rolled past, bloodied and marked by a fate I could never have imagined. A figure lay atop it, face concealed by a grim mask, but the unmistakable form pulled something deep inside me, triggering instincts I didn't even know existed. It was Michael. No, I shouted, rushing forward as the sound resonated in the sterile air like a gunshot, my heart plummeting into a sea of despair. But before I could reach him, the nurse steadied me, eyes wide with concern. Ma'am, please step back. Everything coiled within me, twisting with an urgency so overwhelming it was like a wave crashing against a tenuous shore. This was more than I could bear, the responsibility of choices, the weight of lives interwoven in this chaos. I needed to know he was safe. I needed to be there, to breathe life back into the seams of our family. And as I watched them roll him away, shadows of guilt clawed at my heart, whispering that perhaps not all bonds could survive a storm. How many pieces could I balance before the entire structure collapsed? The culmination of everything, the danger, the decisions made in haste, the man fighting for breath built up in my throat until I felt I might choke. But just then, across the hallway, I spotted Lucas standing outside the room, his small figure seemingly dwarfed by the turmoil surrounding us, unwavering despite the tidal waves crashing against us. My voice echoed in the ether around me, filled with purpose fueled by steely resolve. Lucas, they'll be right back. But as I turned back, the nurse's voice followed me, breaking the dam of silence with words that felt like stabs to my heart. He was in the explosion with you. He might not make it through the night. And just like that, the ground beneath my feet shifted, leaving me suspended in a chasm of uncertainty, teetering on the edge. What if Michael didn't come back? What if everything unraveled before I could set it right? The weight of it bore down on me like the apocalypse whispered in desperate tones, a war waging inside my heart as despair and hope clashed in brutal combat. All I could do was forge ahead into the unknown, where I might find answers or perhaps face a heartbreak that could consume us all. The fluorescent lights felt like a spotlight on a stage where I was no longer the leading lady, but a mere understudy waiting for my moment to fade away. The despair I had felt moments before shifted into an icy resolve, frozen yet pulsating with a desperate need for answers. I forced myself to take one shaky step after another, my heart racing as I recalled every moment, every fleeting happiness, and every breath I had ever shared with Michael. As I struggled to make sense of my thoughts, a hand brushed my arm, drawing me back to the present. It was the nurse, her expression soft yet earnest. "Stay close. We'll do everything we can," she offered, her voice a soothing balm over my frayed nerves. I nodded absently, still reeling from the news. Everything hung suspended in the air: anticipation, fear, and the thick fog of uncertainty. Michael had always been my rock, the one who held me steady when the world threatened to pull us apart. The thought of losing him felt like a knife twisting deeper and deeper into my chest. As I paced the hallway, my mind flashed back to Lucas standing in the room with the man I had once tried to shield him from, a man whose very presence now sparked anger and longing intertwined. I knew Lucas would be frightened, his innocence shattered by the harsh realities of life. Yet I felt powerless to shield him from the storm that surrounded us. I couldn't break yet another promise. I turned toward the waiting area, my feet pushing me forward instinctively, when suddenly I heard a child's laughter ringing through the tension-filled air. It stood out like a beacon in the darkness. Confused yet drawn to it, I pivoted and followed the sound. As I approached, I found a small group gathered around a bright mural painted on the wall, a lively scene of trees and sunshine that felt worlds away from the sterile walls of the hospital. Lucas stood there, laughter bubbling from his lips as he clutched the hand of a little girl, their faces alight with the kind of joy that seemed laced with pure magic. For a moment, I watched, captivated. Lucas looked so carefree, so full of life. The burden resting on my heart eased ever so slightly as I realized that amidst all the chaos, my son still found moments of delight, a reminder that hope exists even in the darkest corners. But just as quickly as I felt that warmth, a flicker of guilt rushed through me. I was supposed to protect him, to keep that smile on his face untainted by sorrow. Yet here I was, stumbling through the shadows while he danced in the light. As I approached, Lucas caught sight of me, and his face split into a radiant smile. "Mama, look at this." He pulled my hand, wanting to show me the artwork, but the weight of worry quickly came flooding back. I needed to be strong for him, to keep that glimmer of joy alive even as the tempest surrounding us threatened to drown everything. "Sweetheart," I knelt down, squeezing his tiny shoulders, "you should stay close to me." "Okay," he replied, but his eyes danced with an excitement that I feared I may not be able to hold on to for much longer. "The girl said she knows how to play a game," Lucas went on, his voice bubbling over with enthusiasm. "Maybe just a quick game, then we can go back to the room, all right?" I tried to sound upbeat, forcing a smile to mask the ever-tightening knot in my stomach. We began to walk back, Lucas still animated, recounting tales of his school day and the games he played. Yet my mind drifted elsewhere, torn between his laughter and the echo of the nurse's words. Michael might not make it through the night. As we reached the room, we stepped inside to find the manic tangle of tubes and bandages, still looking hauntingly familiar and disturbingly foreign. But there was no time to dissect feelings. The urgency of the situation screamed for attention. The moment I stepped closer, his gaze landed on me, a mix of pain and gratitude shadowing his features. "You're back," he rasped, and I felt the weight of his eyes wash over me like a sudden tide. "Lucas is just outside. I wanted to check on you." I could feel my heart racing. Again, the words falling like pebbles in still waters. "Is he okay?" The man's eyes flared with something raw, a flicker of concern that etched lines of worry across his brow. I only wanted to make sure. I could hear the hesitation in his voice, the uncertainty gnawing at the tenuous connection we had begun to tentatively explore. "He needs his mother to stay strong. That's all that matters right now." I willed strength into my own words, filling the air with borrowed courage that I know what it's like to fear for someone. He murmured, the pain threading through his voice seeming almost palpable. You should not have to bear this burden alone. Those words hovered in the air, and I felt them slice through the tumult in my heart. It dawned on me that we were bound by shared experience, trauma echoing in similar chambers. Despite our paths being littered with shards of broken trust, there existed a curious bond that neither of us could deny. But before I could respond, a sudden blare of alarms echoed through the hospital, reverberating off the walls, shaking me from my thoughts. The urgency in the air thickened, and I instinctively turned toward the door, anticipation rocketing through me. Stay with him, Mama. Lucas' voice cut through, and I turned back to see his small frame illuminated by the doorway, eyes wide with concern and understanding beyond his years. Yes, I'm here, I promised him, though deep inside I felt the walls closing in, an overwhelming sense of dread wrapping around my chest. The man winced. The monitors beside him began to flash crimson, and panic surged in my veins. He gasped, his eyes darting away as he battled something inside. I wish I could tell you, but before he could finish, the door burst open, and in rushed a swarm of medical staff, their energy urgent yet controlled. I felt my heart drop. The chaos spiraling around me was like the world's most relentless tempest. I was forced to stand still, hands clenched tight against the very pain I wanted to embracito feel it, to let it guide me. But the reality was more harrowing than I had ever imagined. I was skirting the edges of despair and hopelessness, and my son's fragile spirit depended on whether I could hold everything together as they began to work on him. A doctor glanced back at me, eyes filled with empathy. You need to step outside. This could get complicated, he said softly, sympathy lacing his tone. That I opened my mouth to protest, but realized that I was not a doctor. I was a mother standing on the precipice of losing everything. No, I started, but in that moment, something shifted inside me. I needed to be a constant for Lucas. Somehow I had to, for his sake. Yet as I stepped back into the hallway, I felt that weight shift again. Life and death hung in delicate balance. And as the doors swung shut behind me, a chilling realization settled within that perhaps it was not just Michael hanging in the balance. What if I was losing this man, too? As I felt the world spin around me, a clamor of thoughts now darting back and forth like fireflies. One phrase blazed bright, unrelenting. What if I could never escape the echoes of the past? And just then, my phone chimed, jolting me with a startling shatter of sound. I glanced at the screen, my heart racing with every beat, squeezing my eyes shut for a brief moment. An unexpected number flashed across the display, and the sensation of foreboding whispered in my ears. With trepidation, I reached for the phone, uncertain of what awaited me. The world around me blurred, the fluorescent lights flickering like distant stars as I braced myself against the wall, feeling the weight of expectancy ripple through the air. My heart thudded with every chime of that insistent notification. Who could it be? I thought, pressing the power button to see the screen in its full light. As I stared at the number, dread coiled within me, squeezing like a vice around my chest. I don't recognize this number, I whispered, my breath hitching in my throat. This was not the right moment for surprises. Not when everything felt poised on the edge of an abyss. Lucas's laughter mingled with the tumultuous chaos that threatened to engulf me. I couldn't afford to let my thoughts spiral and needed to stay focused, stay strong for him. But who could offer me strength when mine was ebbing away? With trembling fingers, I answered the call, my voice barely above a whisper. Hello, is this Ava? The voice on the other end was low and steady, in stark contrast to the chaos surrounding me. Yes, I replied cautiously, my pulse quickening. I'm sorry to reach out like this, but it's important. The voice paused, hesitating as if weighing the gravity of the message. This is Detective Collins. I have information regarding Michael. My heart stopped. The world around me faded away until only the breathless desperation to hear about Michael surged within. What do you know? Are you in a safe place to talk? I glanced around, noting Lucas still standing by the closed door, eyes widening, worry etched on his small face. Yes, go on. There's been some new developments concerning the incident, the one that led him here. Please, just tell me. I urged, impatience and fear nodding together. He was not alone when it happened. There are witnesses who saw someone else in the vicinity, a person of interest. A rush of emotions flooded through me: confusion, anger, and a faint glimmer of hope. What do you mean? Why is it important now? There's a chance he was targeted. The weight of that statement settled heavily on my chest, an anchor pulling me deeper into the abyss. I don't know all the details yet, but we're looking into it. We thought it best to make you aware. I reeled, my mind racing. Had everything that had transpired been a cruel twist of fate? Was Michael a victim, or was he caught in a web of something darker? As the walls around me began to close in, I struggled to maintain my composure. Thank you, I managed to choke out, though the words felt brittle, scarcely containing the thousand thoughts clouding my mind. That I hung up, the phone slipping from my fingers, thudding against the tiled floor. The truth echoed in my head, sensorial and heavy. Michael hadn't just fallen victim to chance. There was malice woven into this nightmare. I could feel the ground shift beneath my feet, the room tilting just ever so slightly, and it took all my effort to steady myself. I forced myself to take a breath, my eyes catching Lucas, who had wandered closer, sensing my distress. "Mommy?" he asked, eyes like saucers, innocence threading through the tension. "Is everything okay?" The question pierced through me, reigniting that tender protectiveness. I knelt, gathering him into my arms, the warmth of his small body anchoring me. "It will be, sweetheart. We'll get through this together. But why are you sad?" he asked innocently, and my heart broke at the truth of his words. I wanted him to be oblivious to the storm raging just beyond the walls. But here we were, too close to the storm to avoid it. Before I could form a response, the doors swung open, and the medical staff emerged, moving like shadows against the harsh lights. I released Lucas, standing up with a sudden rush of anxiety. How is he? Is he going to be okay? But I wasn't prepared for the uncertainty in the doctor's eyes. "We're doing everything we can," she said, her voice calm, yet heavy with the weight of reality. "But given the amount of blood he's lost, we might have to." She hesitated as though weighing her next words against my fragile state. "Don't say it," I cried out, fear slicing through my resolve. "I need to know." The doctor's gaze softened. "I can't make promises, but we're trying." I nodded, my heart shattering quietly into pieces. The waiting felt endless, the burdens of hope and doubt clashing within me as I gripped Lucas' hand tightly. His little fingers felt fragile, yet they seemed to offer me some strange solace, a connection that grounded me in an otherwise tumultuous reality. Moments turned into hours, punctuated by the sounds of beeping machines and the murmured words of passing doctors. With every tick of the clock, time seemed to stretch, each second a reminder of the impermanence surrounding us. At last, I spotted a familiar face weaving through the crowd, someone who elicited a rush of complicated emotions. Lucas' father had arrived. Me estranged love, his presence just as heavy and unwelcome as a storm cloud. The weight of our shared history loomed large, a backdrop to the unfolding chaos. "What are you doing here?" I managed, the tension in my voice betraying a mixture of surprise and unease. "That I heard," he said, his expression unreadable as his eyes flickered from Lucas to me. "Is he going to be all right?" "I don't know," I stammered, my strength wavering again. The man I had once loved now stood before me, a silent witness to the wreckage of my hopes. "Can I?" he began, taking a step closer, but I held up a hand to halt his advance. "Please, just don't." The room felt small, the burgeoning feelings of resentment loomed, pushing me back against the wall. The past lingered like ghostly whispers, echoing the miscommunication and misunderstandings that had led us here. My heart ached for what was lost while desperately clinging to what remained. Lucas, sensing the tension, moved closer to me, his presence reminding me of all the love that still existed, even amidst the chaos. I could tell he was confused, not completely understanding the history flooding between us, but he would not have to. Just as I opened my mouth to respond to Lucas with comfort, a loud alarm blared through the hallway, and panic surged anew. The doors swung open again as staff rushed in, and my heart plummeted. "Stay back," I shouted to Lucas, my voice breaking into a commanding cry as I pushed him away just enough to ensure he was safe. The chaos enveloped me, a whirlwind of emotions and fears that threatened to swallow us whole. In that moment, the door to Mitchell's room closed with an unyielding finality. The sense of something shocking, buried deep and unaddressed, whispered again. reminding me of the tender threads yet to be uncovered. That I cast a glance at Lucas, who stood frozen, his confusion reflecting in his search for answers I couldn't provide. And yet, the strange weight of possibility hung in the air, intimate and ultimately shattering. Just then, my phone buzzed again, shaking me out of the turmoil. With cautious fingers, I retrieved it, my heart ready to burst as I read the new message lighting up the screen. Your son's life is intricately intertwined with Mitchell's. I have to tell you what I found. Panic and curiosity mingled together, sending a rush of adrenaline through my veins. What could this mean? My heart raced at the thought of revelations yet to come and the web of connections that threatened to unravel everything I thought I knew. In that moment, with the world crumbling around me, I felt the undeniable pull of fate tightening its grip. Would the truth set us free, or would it break us even further? The fluorescent lights continued to hum with an unsettling monotony, yet the new urgency in my heart drowned out everything else. I weighed the message in my hand, feeling its weighty portent pressing down on my chest, tightening with each passing moment. Mommy? Lucas' small voice broke through the fog of impending dread, pulling me back to him. I forced a smile, attempting to shield him from the inevitable storm looming ahead. He was just a child, yet his innocence felt like a bright beacon in this shadowed world, illuminating the path I needed to follow. Let's step away for a moment, okay? I suggested, my voice steadier than I felt. I reached for his hand and led him away from the chaos that surrounded Mitchell's room, heading toward a quieter corridor lined with potted plants, small, reassuring green figures against the sterile white walls. Why is everyone so loud? Lucas asked, naively tilting his head, the innocent inquiry a soothing balm against the knot inside. They're just worried, sweet pea. Lots of people care about Michael. As I spoke, my thoughts turned toward the words in the message again. My heart raced, conjuring the myriad possibilities swirling in my mind. What could this person know about Michael that I didn't? And how could Lucas be tied to it all? I knelt beside him, our knees brushing against the cool tile. You remember how we talked about families and connections, right? Lucas nodded, wide-eyed, holding on to my words. Like how Aunt Rachel is always telling stories about how she met Uncle Sam. Or how you and Michael helped me learn to ride my bike. Exactly, buddy. I smiled tenderly, willing my eyes not to betray the fear lurking beneath the surface. But sometimes, family can be more complicated than it seems. His brow furrowed, then he brightened. Like how my other friends have step-parents. Yes, just like that. I brushed a strand of hair behind his ear, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the heavy weight of my worries lighten. We'll always keep things safe and happy together, won't we, Lucas? Always, he declared, throwing his arms around me, and I instinctively hugged him back, drawing strength from his warmth. But even as I held him close, uncertainty loomed above us, an oppressive cloud of unknown consequences. I could feel it growing as my phone buzzed again, and I pulled it from my pocket, glancing at the screen once more. The message was still there, waiting ominously. Then, as if summoned by my anxious energy, a nurse approached us, a kind, gentle woman whose smile radiated comfort amidst our chaos. Hello there, she said brightly. How are you holding up? Just waiting, I replied, my voice barely a whisper, feeling the wall of anxiety reassemble around my heart. That's perfectly okay. Waiting is hard work. She crouched down to Lucas' level, her presence unassuming yet warm. And you, little man? You're being super brave for your mom.my mom's always brave. Lucas exclaimed, chest puffed out with pride. I couldn't suppress my smile as the nurse beamed at him, but her gaze shifted back to me with understanding. Listen, would it help to know that Michael is fighting? He's a strong one. The nurse's tone radiated belief, encouragement seeping into my anxious bones. Really? I asked, my heart clinging to each syllable. Absolutely. Sometimes, it just takes a little time, she reassured me, patting my shoulder gently before excusing herself to resume her duties, leaving a wave of warmth behind, in unexpected kindness. I savored it as a fragile thread of hope. I turned back to Lucas, who still appeared blissfully unaware of the magnitude of our circumstances, and I gathered him into my arms once more, desperate to keep this moment alive as we waited for the next news. The moments passed. I felt my phone buzz again. Against my better judgment, I picked it up, knowing I should probably ignore the outside noise. My heart drummed faster as I opened the message. I am so sorry to reach out like this. But you have to know there's a connection between the person of interest and Lucas. It's crucial you learn the truth before it's too late. My pulse quickened, the room closing in on me. Lucas' laughter felt miles away as I fought to control a new surge of emotions threatening to tear me apart. Could it be true? My mind raced furiously, drawing on the implications tied to such a revelation. What kind of connection? How could Lucas, my innocent child, be caught in this unfolding drama? The unresolved doubts from Mitchell's call surged once more, an undertow pulling me into disarray. Mommy? Lucas's voice stirred me, drawing me from the cliff ready to topple over into despair. Can we go see Michael now? Yes, I lied, swallowing the lump forming in my throat in favor of some semblance of optimism. Soon, baby. But just as I opened my mouth to soothe his bubbling anxiety, the hospital intercom crackled to life, announcing an emergency. A chilling sense of dread pooled in my stomach. I looked down at my phone again, heart racing. The world felt dangerously out of balance, and I sensed the rise of something monumental ahead. The weight of the truth, the profound discoveries just out of reach, threatened to tip us all into the abyss. And then, amidst my whirlwind of thoughts, Lucas whispered, "Mommy, I have a secret." My stomach flipped, a new wave of tension tightening around my chest. The possibility that he could reveal something tied to the message that perhaps the truth was about to spill forth from those innocent lips. "Lucas, what is it?" My heart steadied itself, teetering on the edge of catastrophe, ready to plunge into profound depths. "It's about Michael," he said softly, his voice barely a whisper. "I think I saw something that could help." The breath caught in my throat, glancing down into his wide, earnest eyes that held more power than I could ever understand. My mind spun with the weight of uncharted revelations. "Tell me," I urged, feeling the gravity of the moment settle into the very seams of the air we breathed. But just as the words formed on his lips, the doors to Mitchell's room burst open, and the atmosphere shifted with a fierce intensity. A flurry of chaos erupted into the corridor, and I felt the ground beneath me shake as my control began to slip away. With uncertainty circling viciously around us, I braced myself for what was to come. The piece that could unravel everything was within reach, yet I was terrified to discover what kind of truth lay waiting to be unearthed. And in that moment, with Lucas beside me, I was plunged into the heart of a growing storm threatening to consume us all. I stood frozen in the chaos, my heart racing as the doors to Michael's room swung open. The world around me blurred, voices merging into a cacophony of confusion, and instinctively, I reached for Lucas. In the suffocating atmosphere, time felt irrelevant, as if we existed in one eternal heartbeat. The chaos was tangible, a swirling tempest of emotions and urgency. "Stay close, Lucas," I spoke sharply, grasping his hand tightly as the medical team emerged, their expressions a mixture of exhaustion and fear that sent a chill down my spine. Each face bore the weight of their losses and, like a mirror, reflected back the turmoil I felt within. As I moved to shield Lucas from the frantic energy of the staff, my mind raced with a fear I couldn't articulate. What had happened to Michael? Had he fought valiantly, or had the darkness finally claimed him? Just as I managed to pull Lucas behind me, the nurse I had connected with earlier rushed past, her voice urgent. "Where is the family of Mr. Nowak? We need them." Involuntarily, I took a step forward, dread pooling in my stomach. "In his family," I shouted, though my voice felt minuscule against the clamor of emergency around me. I could feel Lucas's small body shivering beside me, his gaze wide with fright, yet holding a glimmer of Hopian innocent light pushing through the encroaching fog of despair. "Right this way," the nurse directed without hesitation, leading us both down the ever-narrowing hallway, away from the chaos, but not from the anxiety gripping my heart. Each step felt monumental, a journey into the unknown, and I kept stealing glances at Lucas, willing him through my gaze to stay strong, that together would navigate this challenge to eye in the waiting area. I leaned down to him, my heart pounding with the unshakable weight of the moment. "Listen closely. Whatever happens, stay by my side. We are stronger together. Promises, okay?" I clutched his hands, ready to anchor myself to him in the storm. Lucas nodded solemnly, an echo of understanding beyond his years, and hugged me tightly. But as we turned the corner, the world shifted again. A doctor emerged, his face pale, and my heart sank deeper. He approached with a slow deliberation that tightened the air around us. "Mr. Nowak, he's regained consciousness," he began, and a moment of hope surged within me. "But there's something important you need to know. What is it?" I urged, my thoughts racing with unspoken fears. The explosion, it wasn't simply an accident. There were external factors involved. Each word dripped with gravity, laden with the weight of implications I wasn't ready to confront. "We're still gathering details, but it appears he was targeted." The ground beneath me shifted again. An earthquake of resonance shattered my fragile hopes. It felt as though the very pieces of my soul erupted into fragments. "Targeted?" I whispered, my breath hitching. "Why?" "Who could?" Before I could finish, Lucas took a step forward, a hesitant look of concern etched across his youthful complexion. "Mommy, what's targeted mean?" It snapped me out of my spiraling thoughts. "Sweetheart, it means someone might have wanted to hurt Michael." I chastised myself for revealing the horror that had unraveled in front of him. But in truth, the cruelty of life was an overbearing shadow looming over us. Lucas's eyes widened, innocence piercing through the thick fabric of our anguish. "Is he going to be okay?" His voice trembled, cutting through the tension with a heartbreaking clarity. I placed my hands on his shoulders, desperately trying to project a sense of calm I didn't feel. "He's fighting, Lucas. We're all fighting." The doctor's gaze was solemn, reflecting the reality I wished to reject. "You should see him. He's awake, and he's been asking for both of you. But it's crucial you prepare for what you'll hear." We followed him through the hallway, every step echoing against the unforgiving tile. Underneath my chest, fear twisted tight as we approached the door leading to Michael. I could feel the reverberations of my heartbeat in my ears, a steady pulse that tethered me to the present, yet the uncertainty of what lay ahead could rupture everything. As we entered, the sight of Michael, tubes still trailing from his form, was an unsettling reminder of vulnerability. He looked up at us, and recognition shadowed his features, sorrow, relief, love crashing into one another with a furious intensity. "Ava," he rasped, words more strained than I ever imagined. "Lucas." My heart swelled. Despite the tubes and monitors, his gaze was still a beacon, the depth of that familiar warmth cutting through the darkness. "Mama." Lucas rushed forward, and I felt a swell of pride and fear intertwine as he stepped into the light, reaching for a man who had been so tangled in shadows. "Hey, buddy," Michael murmured, a gentle smile breaking through the lines of pain that etched his face. "How are you?" "Brave," Lucas declared, his innocence and resolve shining like the sun, a stark contrast to the palpable tension in the room. I couldn't help but gaze at Michael, my heart aching for him. "I didn't know if we would find you here, Michael," I whispered, tears pooling at the edges of my vision. "What happened?" His expression darkened slightly, rage flickering against the despair. "I was caught in something bigger than I imagined. I didn't want it to touch you. I was trying to protect us. But I failed." The anguish in his voice reverberated in the air, a fragile tapestry of regret weaving its way around us all. "Who did this to you?" I breathed, horror gripping me anew. I sensed the weight of dark revelations lurking in the spaces between our hearts, waiting for the right moment to break through. "I don't know yet. But—" He hesitated, glancing at Lucas, who sat perched uneasily on the edge of the bed, his small fingers brushing against Michael's. "Whatever happens, I need you both to know how much I love you." In that moment, all the anger, all the distance and miscommunication seemed to collapse, leaving only raw honesty in its place. It felt fragile, yet resounding, a lifeline of emotion enveloping us in warmth. "We love you too, Michael," I whispered, the admission tearing through my facade of strength. But just then, a tremor of sirens pierced the air outside, echoing the turmoil of the world beyond these walls. The hospital buzzed with activity, the scene heavy with unspoken fears and questions left unanswered. I heard the message, "Ava." He finally broke through the tension, his voice low but steady. "You deserve to know the truth." The world doubled surrounding me. The weight of it all, the uncertainty and pain, teetered precariously on the edge of chaos. But with each passing moment, A realization began to settle in my heart, the notion that through this turmoil, a bond could be rebuilt, a family forged anew in the crucible of what we had endured. I inhaled deeply, locking eyes with Michael, a silent understanding cascading between us. And then, in unison, we turned towards Lucas, who was now cradling Michael's hand, his eyes wide with wonder and determination. "We can face anything together," he declared, his innocent resolve echoing in the hollow space around us. For the first time in a long time, I felt the tendrils of hope push through the fractures of despair. The truth awaited us, yet something meaningful lay in this momentous connection to carry us through the impending storm. A.S. Lucas lifted his chin. Determination etched the contours of his small face. "Let's play when you get better, Michael. We'll do it together." A smile broke through the tears, a glimmer of future laughter breaking the surface that could lift us all from the shadows. "Yes," Michael breathed, and for the briefest moment, we stood together in an atmosphere thick with acceptance and hope. Together, we would navigate the chaos, but first, we would embrace the bond that had persevered through the deepest shadows. "I love you both," he said, voice steady, and for the first time, that love felt insurmountable. Growing from the ashes of uncertainty like a phoenix in rebirth, a promise that despite the darkness, the light would remain. And with that, we would face whatever came next, bound by truth and the hope that tomorrow would bring us closer, a new beginning shaped through unfathomable strength. In the hushed whisper against the backdrop of turmoil, a final thought settled in my heart. Love, even in its most fragile form, has the power to piece together what once fell apart. And so, with our interconnected lives woven through threads of affection and healing, I embraced the unknown, realizing that together, we could withstand any storm that lay ahead. This would be our greatest victory. The light flickered in the distancia, a beacon guiding us forward. In our hearts, a new dawn awaited, and together, we would rise through it, united in unwavering love and resilience.